going to be reading two poems tonight. The first one is a little short, and the second one is a little longer, so bear with me. But yeah, let's just jump into it. This is called Invocation. Scene 1. Soaked with all spirit, a hungry osprey sits on a mast of a frail sailboat, mooring the dock near the local fishing beach, where friendless men wade their poles into the surf and catch the osprey's birth. Positioning on the taloned mast, a school of small fish are surveyed under the pupil of the seahawk, as a jeweler beads a subtle necklace. I am watching a being watching another being, and that is simply the case today at the local fishing beach. Scene 2. The school of small fish scavenge the debris-coated seafloor for another species itching for survival, anemones, shrimp, plankton, hoping, like the osprey, to feast tonight. Scene 3. I am not sure if I will write about survival tomorrow, because I have not yet survived today. Scene 4. I have a new friend of sorts, the osprey, who flaps a fresh coat of salt water off its wings, leaps graceful from the plank, prances with all strength, etching new scars onto the already ailing sailboat, breaking the pesticide film of water that shields me from an immediate dying world. So that's the first one. Thank you. This one is a bit longer and a lot more wordy and a lot more complicated. So yeah, just hang tight. This is called Color Theory. 1. And its poetry craving a fecal mind, who hollers and chimes for the sweetness of skin as a new paper aches for touch, who fathoms a burn mark for silence, graying out the suicide black of night, geriatric spit of wonder and wise and guilt. And its grief will last you forever, only if the pandemonium pushes you back home, Vietnam or New Mexico, or a hole of howling smoke. It comes a shade of brown in lungs of little ones, whose residue screams for peace when torture is the only night we know. You on point with class's cream of purple and its cracking love for amethyst, with pop culture's spunk of song whose vocal is deficient and lyric is live from Albuquerque and is still creating death, whose body is a base for a new kind of home, with their shining badges and triangular flags, for a less progressive West Coast or ethereal engine, for its East Coast Yales, Harvards, with no education of the uneducated. This America who is not a funeral, that is no hungrier than a lowercase a, who cycles blood again and again and again, like riddles for a new age of man. With its change that does not come, is red and like a cauldron of anti-camaraderie. Less palpable than imaginable, less poem than pencil, less plot than body, less cold than filth, less mission than command. For whom we deem less than is music. And we are a poem scratched on tombstone. We are family, licks from tongues of barren mouths struck and soulful, whose Ginsberg strokes a mountain range with ink, and whose sorrow are words that mean nothing and always something to someone who isn't you, and whose poem craves a fecal mind. And who is color, if not you, cries on the back of paintings of Brooklyn, whose mingle is cherished forever, and her water, I imagine, is warm with apprehension, who whistles her way to New Mexico, whose policy crack is snorted and sifted and triumphs home once again, whose image is policing dreams. It is such a violent thing. What's done is done, and we can't escape this violent thing, and we can't escape this violent thing, and we can't escape this violent thing. Whose metaphor is a record and a keychain, clinking together with keys that holler and chime for touch, whose stench is metallic, whose spectrum is a myriad of shine, like the bone of this very violent thing. And we stink of chain, the wrist cuts, we stink of pain, so we riddle from gut and scatter them to a new age of man. 2. Whose real is chosen and not found, whose pulp is rhythm and this music is righteous, for who deciphers the righteousness of reality? of the poem in Lake Hair whose music and wrist is razored off and forgotten like the many streets of home. What is righteousness to you? Pink is the color of marrow, flavorless is tasteless, is sudden, with its charm who stripes 13 on the back of a police vehicle, but really to you, which 50 marks this red and blue? What Chippewa whose soul is in Calabasas, is in Chicago, is in Detroit, is in Phoenix, is in Fayetteville, is in hollow of my body, whose savior is in Burlington and St. Louis and Appalachia and Skokie and the very journeyers of the smoke colony, who is not a victim and cannot be found. They come For saviors, they do not come from the shocking of revolution, they come flooding to the shallow of people, and neighs in freedom as if the gallop is lavender, is loving, is falcon, is fecal, is lavish, and as good as new. Whose Moravian is Edmund, our lamb has conquered, let us follow him. To the brink in which philosophy splinters into 7. 3. Heaven who splinters Lucy, who is the gauze wrapping together the skunk of the arroyo, who is God. And this home is a rambling constraint in which an anagraph of data is gluing us in place. And I've seen you changing tide. I've seen you flood frogs, and I've seen you Abraham a child in your machines. And these bodies whom to you, my love, are simple statistics. And these romances I know nothing of. America, I do not know if you're raw, but I am no less righteous than your infidels, and I do not find you real. And I've heard your clanking in the love poems, and I've heard you changing tide in the virtue signals, and I come to you, and I am not a changed man, and man does not change, and I am not a man for you, my love, for your changing tide does not quench our thirst. 4. So be it if it isn't with our plotting waste and function of immorality, so be it if it isn't if it is, and so be it if I leave, and so be it if I stay, so be it if we all morph to machines, so be it if it isn't Ivy and Sheridan, and if so, we'll weigh Western soul as they quiddle for Western gold and Pentecost in harmony and perilous relaxing. With boast and babbles from bigots wearing bolo ties, quote unquote thief accessorizing, quote unquote white men, quote unquote I can wear this too, quote unquote injustice, quote unquote fashion in exile because of you, quote unquote chains, quote unquote romanticizing genocide, quote unquote hey kids, dress well tonight, don't want to look bad in front of the president. So be it if he looks bad on his citizens, white savior voyeurism, his saliva drips ghoulishness. Who are you to rule this shit? Dead faces occupy my brain, for you, it's just another day. Dead faces occupy my brain, for you, it's just another day. Dead faces occupy my brain, for you, it's just another day. 5, here, gone. 6, screaming and burning and roasting, and whose chants are louder than bombs, from showdowns to Yemen to military exploits, whose mortars are less powerful than poems, whose weapons are deadlier than revolution, whose bullets sing to the beat of war drums, whose policy and judiciary, whose officers are sadists. Oh, to the lost ones, oh, to the revolutionists, oh, to the protesters, the fighters, the innocent, the workers, oh, to the beat of change, oh, to the chants and the unity and the wrongfully charged and the power and the pain and home and the fight still aching inside. For Adam Toledo 13. 7. And my philosophy is no skinny religious reference, and it wolves inside me as a painful glitter, who night sweats the lab with their dreams of becoming something new, but with no agenda for tomorrow. With sudden pulp of the pen, with ink that cradles a baby goodnight. With tales of eastern lands of queens and castles and pretty things, with miraculous Victorian, with willowing forests too peaceful to escape, with too many escapades I've struggled to find a place for. So home, with your wicked suffocation and jugular congealing and scratching fangs, I ask, what comes with your potent tolerance for death? How many bodies are we walking on? How many begonias to soak up the sour of your little game? Thank you.
This is my poem from now on. 1 hour from now, snow will still cover the ground, and I will be staring into the dark of my silent room. 1 day from now, I will be lost in their music, the sound drowning out my impeding sense of doom. 1 week from today, the snow will have melted. I'll be sitting in a room void of the silence I've been searching for, waiting for the day to end. 1 month from now, the snow will be back, trees shivering the snow from their branches. Somewhere along the way, a boy will be by my side and look at me. I'll wonder if maybe he is my miracle. 3 months from now, the boy will hold out roses and teddy bears, clasping the necklace around my neck, a family heirloom. 6 months from now, far into the future, winter wanes and the butterflies fly back home. Hand in hand with the boy who stayed, I will smile into the lens of eternity and wonder how long will forever feel like. A year passes, and I sit at the window tracing the path of 100 fallen raindrops. It was a difficult few months. I wonder if the hidden sun and I are alike. 3 years, and I graduate. Seasons came and went, and I grew up. Here I let go of the past. 5 years later, I sit on my couch, ice cream in hand and television blaring. A kiss on the nose, and the boy stays near. 10 years have passed now, and I can be found where I started. Different now, but not alone. The boy became the man, and down on one knee becomes my man. Laying with my head on his chest, we stare into the darkness, imagining stars sparking and dancing between our bodies. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a poem that I submitted to the Scholastic entries, and it has 3 sections in it. So they sound like different titles, but they're not. From beginning to end, creation. It was early March when the leaves sprouted fingers and touched, stripping flesh gowns grown from stems, blooming hands and arms and legs, and walked. They picked their flowers, and pollen leaked poison, weakening and weeding the ones who flashed rebellion. And the trees watched, scribing these new bodies' actions into their trunks. There was only darkness until there was not. The new bodies set fire to their old roots and caught spare flames, prolonging polluted lungs. These new bodies compiled the remaining roughage and cut the trees and built monarchies. Redwood was reduced to splinters, clung to new bodies' necks, forming persistent cysts. The sunsets that March were particularly pretty, the sky stained with new spirits. It was thought at first to be a beautiful arrhythmia, but was just an arrhythmia. And amity was washed on jagged rocks and rinsed with charcoal and ash-scented water and left to dry and rot. Crisis. I've become insignificant. My bedside marigolds water my tongue, black ice-coated. My ceiling fan clicks as it circles, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, no further, from the road than the linoleum, rolled and bagged. My teddy bear's soft skin left a rash on my cheek, like the faux leather upholstery of my pillow-cased elbow. I nearly broke my nose on a metal bar. I nearly cried, but my frostbitten lips held me still and silent. There are mittens in the closet, along with an unworn hat. My fingertips change pale blue to early violet. My mother used to warm them. The tree in my bedroom window taps the screen, poking spider holes for the cold weather to come. My mother used to sweep the cobwebs. Now they linger. I wonder why it hasn't snowed yet. I wonder if it will. Afterthought. A ring of light and light, pressing broken flower petals dripping scents of amber torn together from cartilage, guided sermons in a pathway of saplings, painting biblical fonts of sacrilege, bleeding broken glass, and cutting spines from skin. Sewn quilts of vertebrae envelop the worshipped pages of spilt wine. A feast day of bruises, cleansing raw and bloodied lips with hot coal, bursting kyries of mercy at the foot of a stained glass altar. Prayers for power shake begotten children from splintered cradles of sparrows' nests, tying nooses made from copper shrouds on untidy headstones. 9 bell chimes filling the chalice to the brim with falsehood, washing the fingers of an infinite world with rusted wings and breadcrumbs, sanctifying the obstructing vessel of salvation. There are no secrets without virtue. Summary: a drop of hot rain and holy water, filling bowls of mud and chartreuse liquor, gifting fig trees for selfishness and whispers for one who cannot speak or hear or see. Thank you.
Sidelines. I never needed you. When I was 11, I met a seed. I didn't know who or what it belonged to. It showed up one day and never managed to leave my sight. Even now, sometimes I see it. When I was 13, the seed grew into a sapling, and we fell in love. At that point, I never left its side. My feet became one with the soil. I watered it every day and provided shade when the heat was too much to bear. When I was 14, it grew into a tree, and its bark began to scratch me. It scratched and scratched. My body ached some days, but my feet were grounded, and there was another sign of life for miles. His leaves grew strong, and before I even realized, he was tripled my size and carried the frustration of 1,000 men. The weeks went on and my scars grew deeper, bruises seemed to never fade, and even when I was alone, I could hear it calling me. Before I managed to reach 15, I ripped my feet from the ground and walked away. It swiped at me and shook its fist. I continued on. I walked and walked. And when I turned 16, the terrible tree became an old memory. And you watched and never did a thing. I never needed you. The garden. Primrose, are you to pick and pry? An unloved and magnetic person, you are drawn to green grass. You stare, yet there is no soul for you here. When will you grow some roots? Can't you see? There is no soul left for you. It was taken away with all your poking. You pried at it once too many times and drove the soil north, where the air is cold and there are no primroses to pick and pry. Thank you.
I have 2 poems today. The first one is called Santa Fe, a reminisced landscape. River Road. Surfactant molecules nibble at the hairs in my nose. A patina cocopelli flutes under botanical rain. This is spring renewal. Fertility farmers dance with blown glass bodies. Hail the duct-taped hummingbird as I sit here reminiscing. The river. Yelp coyote, yearn through baby cry whimpers for frozen chamisa to embroider your fur. Eat yogurt on your banks, play hopscotch in fishbone playgrounds, metal slides sizzle under southwest sun. Sand hair on kyanite eyes on unbaked clay skin, I miss love in the arteries. Medio Street. Mediate, intermediate, mediocre. This is white, once brown stuccoed houses that sit between 24 and sunsets. Wooden-veined chickens peck tortilla crumbs at the converging of threadbare cultures. Sing to a G-augmented chord, played with one less shiver of the spine, while my toes twinkle like pill bugs crying for humidity. Guadalupe Street. Our Lady of Guadalupe stands pink rose haloed while beef oil spills from thin lips at the pedestal. Sacrilege is no savior. Listen to white-winged doves, red-bellied house finches, warble, coo. Illuminate silver coin over adobe roof. As green red peppers drop seeds over red saltillo tile, I gawk at the arid cerulean sky. West Alameda Street. Kosher dill, organically grown, DWI. Home stacked on home, crumbled to crustaceans. Rabbit's feet patter over sangre de Cristos. This is luminosity. She is life for all walks, a teardrop in bottles of water. She is he, him, them, her, their stick, a whittling knife. Carve initials into this tree, this concrete, this asphalt street, as I sit here reminiscing. And my second poem is called Polymethyl Methacrylate, after bodies. Look, psychedelic perspective. I am euphoric scrap metal, acrylic plastic, resin, glass. Melt me, mold me into your perfection. Need bubbles from my skin and lumps from my breasts. Let slip a mistake, retinas for pimples, toenails for eyes, lines for curves. Listen to doo-wop with iron fists clamped in belly fat. Chew me like tobacco, spit to the ground. Scream for stars to brand tender skin and eat my sardine can torso, a saccharine kiss. Light point of view, I am blue marble, epoxy, snowflake, continuum of mirrors and salt, typos in the brain, in the body, dream of bookended fairy tales as I crunch to 4/4 time. Rug burn on rib cage on cold feet, repeat cadence, jump to touch bar standards with your kaleidoscopic humor, mesmerizing serenade, a song. Flick, punch, reject, realize how pincushions make needles sharper, not stronger, break your back over breakfast. This life is no petrichor. I am sibilance in solitude, lying supine, thermoplastic. Don't let me become pliable under this extreme heat. Thank you.
The boy with the scarf and the bell. Nick stepped into the dirt under the grass, his pale feet covered by worn brown leather boots, and brown pants hung loosely from his hips, thin fabric letting the wind blow on his legs. His shirt had no sleeves, leaving his arms cold. The only thing keeping him warm was the bright red scarf wrapped around his neck. Hanging over the scarf was a small rusted jingle bell tied to a black string around his neck. His neck-length raven-colored hair stuck to his forehead and the back of his neck, and his soft gray eyes darted around, trying to look at everything around him at once. He was soaked in his own sweat, and he was sure he smelled of a dead rodent. It had been days since he left his village, 3 days since he was chased out by those he cared for. He knew why, and he understood, but he still hated it. Why did he have to leave? Those kids took off his scarf, revealing his raven mark by accident. That wasn't his fault. He was living a happy life until that moment. Then it all fell apart in an instant. Royal guards came to take him away. They came to kill him, maybe even give him a fate worse than death. All because he had the raven mark, a mark of Odin's sacred birds of memory and thought. All because he scared those humans, even though he was no different from them. He was hunted down like an animal. He barely escaped without being seen, but still, he wanted to go back. He needed to go back. Out here, he was alone, cold, dirty, and scared. Back home, he was welcomed, warm, clean, and happy. He was only given a small dagger that he held tightly in his veiny hand. The wooden handle was full of splinters, and the blade was dull. But it was the only thing he had, and he sure as hell was going to use it the best he could. At this point, his hand was filled with small splinters that be a pain to pull out, so he just left them there. Nick sighed quietly, tugging his scarf a bit with his bony fingers. He hadn't eaten in days. 3 days. He was starving, but he couldn't hunt for the life of him. He tried and failed to hunt a small rabbit the day before. It kicked him in the shins and hopped away. Afterwards, he tried to grab a fish that slapped him with his tail and swam away. Eventually, he just ended up eating the nearest berries he was able to find, though he was half scared to eat some of them. He didn't know the difference between poisonous and not. Nick only had a few berries in his stomach and a bit of water from the river nearby. His body was sore, but he pushed through, no matter how much he didn't want to. His eyes glanced up at the sky, looking at the mountains in front of him. The mountains and trees framed the colors of the sky. The sun rays shone through the trees and branches, making the puddles of water shine with colors that Nick had never seen before. The water mixed with the colors of green, pink, yellow, and more, some he couldn't even name, almost framing the middle of the puddle, making it look like a colorful mirror. The sun started to lower itself in the sky, behind the mountains, leaving the once blue sky an orange that faded into a dark blue and purple. He softly smiled. At least he had this. Ignoring the sores in his body, he walked into the forest. In there, he would have a type of shelter, even if it was only a giant leaf. He avoided as many branches as he could, trying not to get cut by any of the sharp twigs. Lifting his legs a little higher, he stepped over several roots and rocks on the ground. He lifted up his knife, looking at it and frowning. He shook his head. He couldn't turn back now. He had to keep going.
So this is a song that I wrote. It's called Mea Culpa, and it's on the album that is like on the table back there. So yeah, feel free to grab one of those. Here we go. Hey, I'm really sorry. I really sucked that day. Even though I left you, doesn't mean I didn't want to stay. And I still regret it, doing what I did. Now the song is about you. I hope it will fix it. The way you smile lights up the room. The way you laugh can't keep away from you. When you cry, swear I'll never lay aside. When you don't believe in yourself, I'll believe for you. Hey, you know I miss you. You said it was fine, that you understand. You used to people leaving. You slipped right through my fingers, which your hands fit perfectly. Never wanted that to happen. Now I've lost a part of me. The way you smile lights up the room. The way you laugh can't keep away from you. When you cry, swear I'll never lay aside. When you don't believe in yourself, I'll believe for you. I'll believe for you. All the memories that we had gone straight out the window, and the fun things that we did, I threw them all away. I hope you feel like I do, and that you miss me just the same. 'cause I'm gonna call you and tell you just how sorry I am. It's the way you smile lights up the room, the way you laugh can't keep away from you when you cry. Swear I'll never leave your side when you don't believe in yourself. I'll believe for you. The way you smile lights up the room, the way you laugh can't keep away from you when you cry. I swear I'll never leave your side when you don't believe in yourself. I'll believe for you. I'll believe for you. Woo. And even if I messed up the live version, it's fine on the album because I got to redo that like a whole bunch of times. You should check it out.
Secrets in the soil. The sun dries the garden floor as your mother's hair glistens gold and the earth decorates her skin. You've always felt a secret here. It is uncertain what the soil holds, if anything at all. But every time you enter the door, you feel a peculiar magic, the kind that warps your mind in a pleasant sort of wonder. If you visit after all these years, will you feel the same as you did back then? Or have you lost the perception that comes with childhood? You hope to feel a magic alike once more.
The first one's called So Computer Room. I have had enough, but not to go places. So I just learn and make stuff that gets me making mazes. A solitary place makes a chair that is an island in the void of space. It's where I see everything. It's where I stay and think about the authentic asteroids that crash into my unauthentic reality. Why? Those asteroids are a pile of cubes thrown at me. I only feel their sharpest corner, and no matter how sweet and compassionate, I just see in them the image of sensical superiors eyeing me like I'm a foreigner. It starts as a place full of my most wondrous expeditions, a world where violence is the antidote, fighting against everyone else. The yellow jaws of Pac-Man are injustice, and his colored foes are nationalists, capitalists, and the moral citizens of any country. They now live in the present with economic pyramids built for them, trapping them. They're all left to be socially classed. Why? So, computer room. The news is rather complicated. Everyone populates together just to wear a disguise, a costume which speaks for themselves with their voices, speaks the same moral that's never tolerated. When I sit in that same island, my disguise isn't seen. It's never judged by the asteroids which can crush the handmade painting, but it cannot be elevated by comets and their purifier of the oceans. My works are the sign that tells my story from my voice. I put it out into that population of voices and costumes. Every day a new disguise showing a new voice echoes through the news. They become orations which so many kids and minors hear. They are watching videos of protests which aren't even peeled to their core. They can hear them, but can't listen to them. Why? And in the news, a day never goes by without another simple businessman having the chance of a lifetime and end back where he began. Why, if I can't survive in the night of my computer room without feeling despair, which helps me persist through the trees and grass of abundance, how could any mortal survive in real life filling their hierarchy of needs with just simple numbers on a bank account? How could I live in the reality outside of the computer room if I can't survive in my island of unauthenticity? Why? Survival shows how rich and powerful man is not a person's satisfaction. The costumes and my works show how the man doesn't understand that abundancy of money is nothing but an infatuation. My computer has multiple games of survival. They all say the same thing. Riches in the number of diamonds. So not the quality, but the quantity, my computer room? Repetition of something boring is an infatuation, like the many apps made by ones and zeros. They won't change my world. They won't buy the island I have been destined to make my whole life. I bet every person who makes the costumes projecting their voices in the news tries to do that too. So, computer room, I sit here. An island full of my favorite dishes, which I never have to buy, but rather make. Because there is no restaurant, it's your kitchen room. I walk out of there, a galaxy full of asteroids that just crash into one another, destroying the voices, my voice. Yes, some of them are comets turning me into a utopia. But what about the rest? Why only about the rest? My second poem is called Money Zebras. About to fly or fall, but I won't. Clouds are beautiful and very high up. Greedy donkeys must feel this way when they're feared by and praised. Existing up here is having a hard life, unstable and perfect. For this world, no one can even have $1,000 and buy a cigarette. Gosh, if it were simpler to buy cigars. Having riches pierce through freedom is a living frustration for an unlucky, golden, organized man, just for him to become unluckier. Kind of helps him buy his cigar, like the desperate man he is, eating an alive piranha, which will eat him. Much like that, cigs are plentiful but damaging, and afterwards, no become his lungs. Of course, I am that man, and now I lost my voice. Exhale, push the smoke out so I forget money, quell money, run away from the shame, and spit away the money. Trash is better than money. Umbrellas bought with money wouldn't even protect or vanquish the non-equalizer of our place. Withstand money, you withstand the deals from evil. Exile the happy in this place, because you never find happiness, just adrenaline. Zebras with gray painted backs represent this place as good and bad. Thank you.
Girl with a pearl earring, reaping dandelions from cracks in the tile of her house, haunting hubristic lips glossed in saliva, jaw set firm around the judgment of her jury as granite spiders lose legs to the keratin of pointer and thumb. Pearl prized with pleated sleeves rolled up, oyster anguished at insouciant palms piecing him apart, and for every grain of sand there are 10,000 stars. Maybe she tried shucking them for a grander pearl, or perhaps to her they were fragments of the sun. It's possible they were a backdrop, weak compared to daylight and young dawn. Let me imagine, though, that she cast attention not over her shoulder, but up. My third and final poem is called Facundity. Mothers hug puppets in chains with sawtooth plates, attired in shades of dairy white and beige. Marital vow cages the working callous. Gratitudes only come with guilt and sriracha speculums that spread poor man's vagina. Consult a lawyer and draft gold to sell with poison oak. Heartfelt apologies symmetrical to the construction detour signs on street corners. It's a longer route, but you get where you're going like Candyland or Chutes and Ladders. Little girl picking sunflowers, astonished one day she'll hold an infant in her arms, raised in velvet-varnished greenhouse. Poppy seeds planted in eroding period blood, handfuls of soil salivated on, make mud. We're all fat pigs, wagging checkered flags as the last animal slides through bruised finish line. Dainty delicacies melt sucralose on wagging pink puppy tongues. Candied bee stingers irritate on healthy gums. Forgot to label rat poison bubblegum.
Tinnitus bringing child squeals in the left half of the brain, prefrontal cortex contorting acrobatic men into spineless soft-dough pretzels, unsalted and unbaked, more appetizing than the arrogance of being good, babies baptized in dirty dishwater while incubators sit down with a hot cup of fertilizer. Thank you.
Today I will be reading 2 poems from a collection titled 16 Candles. This poem is called Manifest Destiny. 1. The Long Walk. Beneath the moccasins we are calloused or bloody. The droplets we leave behind stain the pews like acid and leave perfect circles through the cushions. Tonight, twin Bilagana devils will march through our hogans while their white-hot shoes leave glass footprints, and they will scoff at Father Sky's un-American blue and tell us of their God as they always have. Tomorrow, Kit Carson will scrape through the carpet laid over his grave and offer us knives and guns, like these are gifts. As in, don't you want to be just like us? As in, don't you want to be just like us? Today, Lamanite and Navajo dancers sell camouflaged accents along the highway, and this is a gift, as in, now we've made it, as in, now things can begin, now that we're beyond the reservation border. 2. Kill the Indian. For our anniversary, my boyfriend presses his fingers to my neck just to be sure that I'm still alive, just to keep the exonerating evidence around. Those memorial flowers won't plant themselves. My tourist traps are roadside crosses. What else are they good for out here? They mark the path of King Noah and his flaming hands through those flea-ridden bags of flesh and their buckets of starved corpses. Are these people, or are these dogs? 3. Save the man. The celestial kingdom awaits none of us. Instead, it awaits our liaisons, geometric blankets, turquoise belts, and children racked with homesickness. In return, Christ sends beach sands as penance for everything lost to the tribal police, foot soldiers of the devil and their useless badges. Apologies, Christ says, for the murals of the generals left outside your memorials, but, well, you'll understand when you're older. I mean, you can't forget your place. Our dead are statues, museums, immortalized. Your dead are only that, dead. 4. Scorched earth. All things denote there is a God. Ours is second-hand, a punisher first, a liar second, an ego third, a father fourth, and a man last. God denotes there is a devil. I'd know. I can still hear him. The voice of my childhood summers, how it howls like coyotes and nauseates like snakes. God denotes there is a devil. So here is a parting gift, a town without a place for our dead or even their murderers. This second poem is called Frankenstein. 1. Pocahontas. These hands have touched God. These feet have pressed into concrete prints of blood where my father guided me across the glass, across shattered beer bottles that clung to my skin without discrimination. If you kissed me, could you smell it? Blood on my thighs marked by a dozen sources, expired makeup smeared into infected skin, the smell of a child unfinished. If you kissed me, could you feel it? The elasticity stripped away by the man that I want you to be. The way the skin around my mouth peels with age, the feeling of a woman unforgiven. If you kissed me, could you hear it? The holy people whose jewelry still sings me to sleep, the ring of my father's breathing when he drinks, the sound of a man unyielding. If you kissed me, could you see it? Soul-etched stretch marks and silicone coverings, your face on my skin-deep fantasies, the sight of adolescence unwound. If you kissed me, could you taste it? A desert drunk and his collection of copper pennies, waterlogged saliva and slick fingers, the bounds of my want uninhibited. 2. John Smith. When you ask me, rightfully suspicious, what do you look for in a man? I'll say, I want a man with a few extra tongues in his mouth. I want a man with calluses on his knuckles. I want the kind of man who leaves glass footprints in sand. I want the kind of man whose hands are sewn to fists, whose voice is bound to stampedes, whose voice is welded to fireworks, whose backhands are prayers. I never told you, but I still think of you. A wild, unending feeling superimposed on skin and bodies and faces and hands and bruises, striking into want I've not cut clean, left just below the stitches, festering, molding. These are not you. These are what is left of you when you are not here and still manage to stick to my hands. A kiss beside a body is made into a field. A body beside a kiss is made into porcelain. A kiss beside a kiss is made into hands, and a body beside a body is made into crosshairs. Thank you.
So this is going to be 2 poems from a collection called The Things I'll Learn to Love About You. Number 1, compulsory attention. Your desperation should be effortlessly concealed. Every angle is flawless by necessity. Fear suffocates under the layers of your pride. This is your performance. An audience requires perfection. Losing interest is a crime. You will be punished. Learn to use yourself. These tools gifted to you for a purpose. Work tirelessly. Let no one see your sweat. 2, anger. Her nails scrape lines into my back, a gentle reminder of an inevitable return. She spins ugly thoughts into pretty words. She softly caresses raw scars. She condemns me for allowing someone to get this close. My explanation falls on deaf ears. I beg her to understand that my skin is paper thin. It takes only an ignorant mind to tear it. Blame cannot be placed for an unreasonable heart. There is no consoling her, lost in an endless anger, enraged at her helpless nature. She begs for a chance to avenge, to scream obscenities at every trespasser, as if her voice isn't hoarse and scratched, her eyes blurred and red. One day we will meet, my love. One day I will embrace your insanity. Thank you.
So hi, I'm Brooke, and I'm going to be singing 2 original pieces. This first one is called Guardian Angel. Call me baby, sing me to sleep. Ward off the nightmares that keep happening. Hold me tightly, don't you dare ever let me go. Whisper in my ear softly that I'm not alone, and I'd say, my guardian angel, my light at the end of the tunnel. Promise you won't leave me like everyone else has, 'cause you keep me at bay, you keep me sane, and I hope that you feel the same. But if you don't worry, I'll be okay. At least that's what I'll say. My heart goes ticking like a clock, and I know one day it's gonna stop, and it freaks me out. I don't know how to go on normally without you by my side. How will I survive? Hold my hand tightly, don't you dare ever let it go. Whisper in my ear softly that I'm not alone, and I'd say, my guardian angel, my light at the end of the tunnel.
I know you were made for me, and I was made for you. You were written by stars and written by gods, and in my heart you're my blue-eyed melody that I keep hearing. And so you say, my guardian angel, my light at the end of the tunnel. I promise I won't leave you like everyone you known has, 'cause you keep me at bay, you keep me sane. Don't worry, princess, I feel the same for as long as you love me. You're a dragonfly, I'm a butterfly. You ignite fireflies within me. You have starry eyes, blue eyes. Cliche as it sounds, I hate when you're not around. Oh, you're a daisy, dainty and pretty. Don't you see, I would do anything. I'd lie, I'd cry, I'd fight for you. You're my wonderland, you're my neverland. I don't know when this will end, but I know I'm okay with it. You're a vision, worn out perfection. You're everything wrong and all the right places. Just admit that you are fiction, or you're a dream, lucid and serene. Don't you see, I would do anything. I'd bleed, I'd kill, I'd die for you. Don't you see, I would do anything. I'll smile, I'll laugh, I'll live for you. You're the boy in my head, things I have yet to experience. So I'll try for you, I'll live for you.
I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a longer script I wrote this year. The whole thing is about 30 pages, but I'm going to be reading about 4. It's called Everything to Give Flowers For. Interior, mysterious room, night. An off-pitched whistle can be heard in a dark room. The only things illuminated are a pair of leather-gloved hands, electric hair clippers, and the decapitated head of a woman with long, dark hair and an expressionless face. The gloved hands mold the woman's skin, opening her eyelids to reveal her dark eyes, relaxing her cheeks and dragging down the corners of her mouth. The whistling stops. The hands turn on the hair clippers. The buzzing sound is deafening. Long strands of hair fall to the ground. Interior, flower shop, day. Melly, aged 8, opens the purple storefront door. Her hair is waist-long, and her lacy white skirt drags on the green carpeted floor. Above her, a series of chimes go off as the door hits a string of bells and hanging plastic insects. Melly rocks from her heels to her toes while the bugs swing back and forth. Everything is too bright. Further inside, shelves of disembodied brown and gray human heads line the walls. The heads are hollowed out, bald, and filled with various vibrant flowers: red, yellow, green, purple, blue. Labels below the heads detail the flower species they contain and a small card describing their meaning. The shop is long and expands far down one large aisle. Light on her feet, Melly wanders around the shop, humming a soft tune beneath her breath. She is the only one there, except for the shop owner who lurks behind the cash register watching her. He is a lengthy man with small features reminiscent of a millipede. He wears a long orange apron. Melly's hum meets an abrupt stop when out of the corner of her eye she spots a woman's head exploding with yellow flowers on the bottom shelf. The woman's face holds an aloof expression. Her blue eyes gaze up as if she is trying to see the flowers within her. Her cheeks are pinched in at the sides, making her lips wrinkled and puckered yet slightly agape. Staring at the head transfixed, Melly kneels down to its level as if she is to pray. But instead, she runs her fingers along the concaves of the face, then down the bridge of the crooked, long nose. For a moment, the head's eyes seem to roll back into its skull. Melly traces circles around the eyes and one large circle around the lips. She then mirrors the same action on her own face. There's a sign above the head, beneath the head reading, "Chrysanthemums for friendship and good wishes." A smile, lemon rind bright, spreads across Melly's face. She gives herself a satisfactory nod and picks a singular flower out from the head. Blackout. Exterior, neighborhood, dirt path, day. The sun-weathered, muted yellow school bus drops off kids in a dirt patch right outside of a small neighborhood. Melly is already off of the bus waiting. She holds something behind her back. A scrawny little boy hops down the steps and bolts past Melly.
Hold on, wait for me.
The boy looks behind him and slows down, but he does not stop.
Better catch up.
Melly starts sprinting with the chrysanthemum still in hand. A few petals fall on the dusty path, leaving a yellow trail behind her. She catches up to the boy, and they double over, panting.
What's with the flower?
Melly looks over at the boy, who is now distracted by an ant carrying a dead moth over a rock. An anthill waits on the other side, but the ant keeps having to stop. The moth is too heavy in its mouth. When the ant begins to move again, the moth's body is dragged against the rough stone, making a microscopic scraping sound.
It's for you.
The boy makes eye contact with Melly.
Oh, cool.
Melly hands the flower to the boy, who tosses it back and forth in his sweaty hands.
Do you like it?
Did you pick it yourself?
No, flowers like that don't grow around here.
The boy holds the flower up to the cloud-covered sky. His hands are small, sweaty, and stained with brown marker. Dirt hides beneath his bitten nails.
It looks like the sun.
The flower droops slightly against its dreary background.
Yeah, I guess it does.
They pass small old houses, old cars, and old creaking swing sets. The boy begins plucking slender petals off of the flower. With each pluck, he dramatically tosses the petals to the ground.
Love me not. Love me not.
As the boy plucks the last few petals, Melly tries to catch them before they fall, but a sudden gust of dirt and wind blows them out of her hand. Melly turns away from the wind as the boy attempts to shield himself from it. Mellie's long hair covers her face, and the two kids become drenched in dirt. Finally, the wind passes. Mellie and the boy try unsuccessfully to dust the dirt off of themselves. The boy lifts up his head to see his house across the street. A perfect full-teeth smile gleams across his face. The house is just as run down as the rest of them: chipping paint, a crooked roof, a fence with missing posts, and dead rose bushes that line the crumbling flagstone footpath. Mellie looks at the boy, who has already begun to walk across the street.
Where did the stem go?
The boy doesn't turn around.
What?
Mellie pauses for a moment, preparing herself to say something.
Can I come over?
The boy unlatches the lock to his fence.
I think your flower blew away.
Beside the rock, the poor ant is now curled up into a little black ball. Its moth is gone. The boy walks up the creaky wooden steps to his front door and waves goodbye to Mellie. Mellie drops like the chrysanthemum against the sky. The boy steps inside his house with his back towards the door, then abruptly shuts the door. Mellie walks the rest of the way to her house alone. Thank you.
I'm going to read a very small excerpt from a poem that I wrote, so it's really short. It's called Cigarette Nostalgia. The smell of cigarettes on a dank New York night strikes a part of my heart I wanted to forget I had. My organs rot and fail. Cigarette butts riddled on the ground are the only things that bring you back to life. My room is filled with ash and unburned tobacco, and I'm drowning in that nicotine smoke. My lungs are black and blue, and the riptide of addiction never truly leaves. Sculptures of toxins and $3.69 keeps me grounded to a blissful memory.
So this is only the last couple pages of my short story, and I hope I don't bore you too much. Last night's storm had since passed. A field mouse licks the rainwater that's collected in a bowl-shaped brown leaf, then scampers as the sound of invisible wings swoop overhead. The mouse should have been more wary of the watching tabby cat. He had been only seconds away from pouncing on the thundering heartbeat. That cat now flicks his ears and remembers his last summer in that same clearing, the great boulder of a grizzly bear that had shown the cat to his sapphire-sparkling brook with its minnows that danced away from their shadows, and its migrating salmon which seemed to leap from the great bear's paws. The bear's cave is empty now. The cat walks back to its desolate lumberjack owner with his lonely room and its bearded face. The cat doesn't know what a smile is, nor does its owner try to show him. The old lumberjack heaves at every swing of his old axe, though he takes too good of care of it for rust to knock on its door. It's oiled and sharpened bi-weekly, and though last winter he fashioned a new handle from pressure-treated pear wood. The splitting wood echoes through the dim forest. The sun wants to take its leave for the day, only a minute later than yesterday's. He swings to rid the forest of the fallen spruce. He gets paid to live in some cabin and make sure that no one burns his forest down. Once a month, he drives into the city for cat food and saltines. The cashier doesn't look him in the eye. When standing on the cabin's roof, people can see the far-off city below, and they remember how much money they spent to live like the lumberjack for a week, live like they knew how to. The roof will creak, and they'll become scared and use their shiny ladders and new hiking boots to get down. No light pollution. A man with a fancy Nikon camera stayed out in the cabin for nearly 4 nights trying to capture the Milky Way galaxy with his long exposure before cursing out a storm and its wall between him and Orion and Ursa Major. His brunette daughter wails at the lack of Wi-Fi on her iPhone XS, and he snaps at her to go for a walk instead. Go try out those eyes on something real for once. She finds a tabby cat whose eyes seem to frown at her, and a brook that she tries to jump across. She instead gets one of her boots wet, and an old lumberjack staring at some newly fallen tree. He doesn't see her, but maybe he should have. The minnows dance away from her shadows, and a caterpillar's cocoon hangs from a poppy. She returns and asks her father to go home. He tells her to go away again. The girl wishes that she had more to remember, and she wishes her father would teach her how to use long exposure on a fancy Nikon camera.
This is a very personal piece. It's a flash fiction piece called The Raven. Elise was one of the most cautious women you would have ever met. She was my grandfather's sister. Every night she would check all the blinds, check the doors to see if they were locked, search the house for strangers, learned how to use as many weapons as possible so she could protect herself if need be. You know, the usual. There was one thing that stuck out to me when I lived with her. She used to talk to a raven that always sat on her shoulder. It was her best friend. She didn't trust anyone other than her raven. She was large and took up most of the space on Elise's shoulder. She stood taller than Elise's head. Elise would whisper things to her raven, probably her secrets that she could never tell anyone else. She said it would prevent people from talking about her. Almost nightly, I'd hear her mumbling to her raven in her room. One night, I went to check on her, and she was pacing, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. "Elise, what are you doing?" I said in a low, almost whisper. Elise said nothing in response. She just continued, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. She began exhibiting odd behaviors. She would greet every person in every picture, regardless of if they were someone she knew or recognized or not. She organized all her jewelry because she swore people went in and rearranged all her possessions. Every time my dad would come visit her, she'd look at him as if she'd never met him, but she got good at pretending. When she got stressed, she would shake her hands and hit herself on the top of the head with her wrists. She would mumble to her raven all the while. The bird's jet-black, oily feathers would puff up whenever the bird felt as though Elise was being threatened in any way, shape, or form. Elise soon began having bladder and bowel control issues. My family would always pretend to care, which was always upsetting because they never cared before when she was healthy. She began taking out her frustration by not wanting to take her meds as well as bathe, sleep, or eat. It became a challenge to take care of her, so eventually I put her in a nursing home, visiting her every day. She began to think I was her father, so I began using this to my advantage, getting her to do things that way. Her raven stayed with her the whole time. Her bird was the only one she trusted at that point in her life. At the end of her life, it got so bad she couldn't remember much. It was just her raven, but even she disappeared. Elise had forgotten about her, so she faded. Poof. No more raven. Of course, the raven was never truly a real bird. Elise had made her up 20 years before she had died. Her bird was her vent place. But soon she became so much more than that. I still visit Elise every day, and I bring her fresh flowers. I don't want her to fade like her raven did. She was the most cautious woman I'd ever met. Thank you.
This is a poem. It's called A Tale for Those Who Believe and Not for Those Who Sit Around Doing Nothing But Eating Sugar Cubes. The sands of time stand still. Here come the workers. Watch them. Look at them go. Boulders of crystal wait and stare. They sit with fragments of shells and shattered bottles long lost to us. The workers don't mind. They love them all the same. Each grain holds a soul. Here they bring their prizes. Glass inside glass, the layers tumble, down, down, down. It is a never-ending dance to death, drowning those who could never keep up. The workers know nothing beyond this plane. They walk across silt-covered mountains they will never see beyond. Mummified bodies of their ancestors line the worn path they travel, and yet they laugh. Look, here they come, holding our legacies. They bring them down, storing the lengthy scrolls amid spiders, webs, and water. Watch their little legs carry the burden of time and soft olive leaves. It could all be so simple. Maybe it is all so simple. They continue to march in rhythm to the heartbeat of the air, never knowing the stems they walk past are topped with vibrant petals, flowers that drink the morning and wave in the sunshine. They are, after all, only ants. Thank you.
I am going to be reading an excerpt from my short story, Ripped Away.
Mason didn't say anything and just started the car, starting to drive towards the mountain range. His palms were sweaty, but he kept a cool face, not wanting Dante to see how scared he was. They get to the spot and hike up the mountainside. Once they got to the top, they put down a blanket and sat down. Dante was eating a pastry and got something on his cheek. Dante, you've got something on your mouth. Wipe it off. Instead of using the napkin Mason was trying to hand him, Dante stuck out his tongue and tried to lick it off. No, stop. You're nowhere close. Here, stop behaving like a wild animal and use a napkin like a civilized person. Dante looked him straight in the eyes and pulled out his phone. Using it as a mirror, he finally ended up licking it off. Looking at the taller man with a happy smirk, he went back to eating. When they were both full, they laid down together and looked up at the stars. The stars are beautiful tonight, Dante said. Yeah, amazing. You know who else is beautiful? You. Mason looked over in surprise. Since when are you so cheesy? I mean it. You, Mason, Frederick, Prince are the most intelligent, beautiful, kind, caring, and all-around amazing guy anyone could ask for. I hope I never lose you. You are the best thing in my entire life, and just being around you makes me better. You are perfect in practically every way. You make my life complete. There's only one thing I would ever change about you, and hopefully you would let me. Your last name. Mason was silent as the gears clicked in his head, and as he realized what was happening, Dante took out a ring. Will you marry me, Princey? Damn it, Dante! Dante froze terrified while Mason stuffed his hand in his pocket and opened a small black box containing a ring. Dante starts laughing. Mason joins in, and neither of them can stop. They fall against each other, and it isn't for a few minutes that they stop laughing and are left to catch their breath. So is that a yes? If you say yes to me. Dante rolls his eyes as he grabs his fiance's hand and put the ring on him. Mason smiled and returned the gesture. And there they sat, hand in hand, watching the stars, thinking of the days to come. 1 year later. No, Mason says, his vision blurred with tears. Mason, please. I'm sorry, Charlie, I can't. I cannot see him like that. I know, but if you don't, you will always regret not seeing him one last time. You will regret not saying goodbye. Mason took a shuddering breath, and his brother took his hand and led him into the room. Everyone was crying. It was a small crowd. Only the people closest to Dante were there. They all looked at Mason. He couldn't look at any of them. He stared straight ahead at the open casket. He slowly walked towards it. He looked into the casket. Beautiful was the only thought going through Mason's head. Even in death, he looks beautiful, in a way that an angel is beautiful, in a way that no one can truly describe, in a way that no one else would see. Dante was in the suit he was going to wear to the wedding. The sight of his fiancée like that sends tears rolling down Mason's face at a rapid rate, but he doesn't make a sound. Flashback to the day before the wedding. No, absolutely not. It is bad luck to see the groom before the wedding, Dante said. That's a bride, idiot, Mason replied. I don't care. I'm going to stay with Logan so he can help me get ready and hopefully avoid any cold feet. Dante packed a small bag with his suit in it. Mason sighed. Whatever, I guess I can bear to part with you for one night. Don't worry, if you say I do tomorrow, you will have so much of me you'll be begging me to leave you alone. I would never. Good night, I love you. Good night, I love you too. See you tomorrow. I'll be the one in the purple suit. Haha, whatever, Dante. Dante gives the taller man a peck on the cheek before turning around and getting into his car. The engine starts, and Mason watches as Dante peels out of the driveway and glides down the street. Dante is halfway to his brother's house when he feels off. A bad feeling covers him, but he shakes it off as he gets closer to the green light. He keeps driving. The trees block the intersection, but Dante has the green light. Too late, he sees the headlights. Too late, he looks over and sees the gasoline truck, and too late, he presses the brakes. Neither of them can stop in time. The blast sends the smaller car flying. It crashes into more trees, and Dante is pinned to the seat by a heavy branch. He can't move. All he feels is pain. He opens his eyes, and he sees his engagement ring lying a couple of feet away. He musters enough strength to move his arm and grasp the ring lightly. That is how they found him, dead, grasping the last reminder of his love. A small tug on his hands brings Mason back to reality. Charlie looks at him with worry in his eyes. Mason shakes him off. It's too overwhelming. He walks out the door and drives away before anyone can stop him. He is
on autopilot the whole way home. He doesn't remember getting out of the car. He doesn't remember going to the house, and he certainly doesn't remember grabbing Dante's hoodie. He just knows somehow he ends up on the floor holding the fabric, wishing the pain would just stop. He wishes Dante were there. Mason's logic was flawed, but he was desperate and grieving. He grabbed a piece of paper and a pen and started writing. Mason was an actor, an artist, but somehow he could barely find the words to say goodbye. He filled half the page and put it on an envelope addressed to his brother. He set it on the desk, out of reach from the blood that would soon flood the floors, safe from the tainting tragedy of this story. Thank you.
This next piece that I'll be singing and playing, it's a song that I incorporated into a screenplay that I wrote this past quarter in Diego's class. And yeah, it kind of depicts this character as they walk through their life, and it's called Rocky Road. It started with a dream when Rocky Road fell off a street lamppost sign. It was such a pretty dream, built off the back of sweat and screams. It then fell in the bin as it found a way to start again. Some dreams come true, some dreams they last forever. Now it's finally here, almost doesn't seem real. All the pain that I feel for what could have been. It then became a dream when all else on the list came to fruition. It ate up all that it could see, leaving the messy plate clean. It was a dank and dismal way, but soon it learned to walk with a cane. Some dreams come true, some dreams they last forever. Now it's finally here, almost doesn't seem real. All the pain that I feel for what could have been. And now it's still our dream when Rocky Road hit the bucket in spring, when all the world was so obscene and all the pain could be seen. All hope went down the drain when Rocky Road got hit by a train. Some dreams come true, some dreams they last forever. Now it's finally here, almost doesn't seem real. All the pain that I feel for what could have been.
This is a poem titled Broken Bookshelves. If you were to look inside me, you would find bookshelves made of broken ribs, filled with small notebook after small notebook, bound with the fabric of old memories. At first glance, you'd think they would be of lovely things, yet when opened, they're full of ink blotches, dark and sticky, page after page of all the things I wish I'd forget. All the things I did that I hated, and instead of being left by the curb, they're wrapped and swallowed shoved down my throat, pushed deep out of sight. Stacked on shelf after pile after dark, forgotten corner. My heart, you ask? It's there, just buried. If you press yourself to me, and if I let you see, you can hear it beneath the cracked ribs and worn satin ribbons holding down firmly every memory, every loose piece of life.
I have a poem, and it is titled The Brisk Wind. There has never been a day that I haven't yearned for your touch, your smell, your cold, your life. From morning and evening walks to adventures along abandoned houses, you are with me. Everywhere I step, everywhere I swing, you are there. But when the days are hot and the clouds have gone, you are nowhere to be found. Not under bridges, buildings, gardens, or ponds. You've simply ceased to exist. And I, a loyal disciple to your touch, await your seasonal return, when you will once again glide amongst abandoned houses, under bridges, in the evening and in the morning. I walk, I breathe, and I live for the brisk wind. Thank you.
I am the self-proclaimed Giffy, goofy giggly gal, and I cannot get this mic stand down. There we go. Okay, hi. So this poem I wrote before the war on Ukraine, and it's titled Kiev, which, you know, kind of an unfair coincidence. But the message still stands, and I hope you enjoy, so thank you. Oh, it's also like 4 parts, so if I pause, please don't clap. That would make me very uncomfortable. Look at me, I'm so funny. I'm what I can't even finish the joke, I'm not funny. Okay. 1. Look at our little oasis with tongue plated and inscribed with gold. Swallow the dust as the dust begins to swallow you. Look at death on a tarot card, the reflection as death stares back, and bite dirt-stained nails down. Why can't I just draw the lovers? Look from the bridge, a street of fire so great, my flesh melts right off the bone like candle wax. 2. He lays in sickness, sores of pus climbing up his neck, where hand used to hang off like a gold rosary tucked into shirt collar. In sickness, I cannot touch him. Instead, I dream of nighttime remedies and half-filled water glasses of iodine as some form of roadside memorial. I turned to the wrong page. In sickness, he crumbles under sunlight, a long-removed reminder of the child who would run through morning's daylight to feel the burning of his lungs, long removed to the intentions of a boy who is time. 3. To be alone within the borders of the universe, watching the affliction flow off the edges through a waterfall, river Styx. My feet are no longer mine, rooted in the warm grip of Mother Nature and her kindness in the way she keeps our boys warm within soil. Glowing like an atom bomb, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of witnessing the expansion of infinity. 4. Things are quiet, all but for a slight ringing in the left ear. It is June. We are safe. Fish-eyed lens of concrete so high, the blue of the sky becomes flattened in a mixture of remembrance and the urge to deny guilt. Puddles of people, photographs of rain, these are the things we deshell like pistachios on an old dining room table, or just as reflections of the ambitions we once were. It is June. We are safe. Thank you.
The geometry of innocence, flesh on the bone, cause it's got a little math book to go get thrown. And Delilah, who sits so worthlessly alone, but the tears on the grill, his great thrill. I'd set him in chains at the top of the hill, then send out for some pillars into Seal Beach Mill. He could die so happily ever after. Mom's in the factory, she ain't got no shoes. Daddy's in the kitchen, he's looking for the fuse. I'm in the streets with the tombstone blues. John the Baptist, after torturing the thief, looks up at his hero, the commander-in-chief, saying, "Tell me, great hero, but please make it brief. Is there a hole for me to get sick enough?" Oh, the commander-in-chief at his head while catching a fly, saying death to all those who would whimper and cry. And dropping a barbell, he points to the sky, saying the sky's not yellow, it's a chicken. Mama's in the factory, she ain't got no shoes. Daddy's in the alley, he's looking for the fuse. I'm in the streets with the tombstone blues. The geometry of innocence, flesh on the bone, causes Galileo's math book to go and get thrown. Delilah, who's this, so wordlessly alone, but the tears on her cheeks are from laughter. The sweet pretty things are in bed now, of course. City fathers, they're trying to endorse the reappearance of Paul Revere's horse. But the town has no need to be nervous. Mama's in the factory, she ain't got no shoes. Daddy's in the alley, he's looking for the fuse. I'm in the street with the tombstone blues.
Hi, today I will be reading one poem. Sacrifice. You held me like an unwinding tune, slipping from your tongue into an ocean diseased. Your love an infection, a wretched blessing which stirred the wild waters into sins I bathe in sins, bubbling from within, hissed acid, rancid and fizzing. Your hands never felt like hands. They felt like Cerberus's jaws, disembodied, held in your lustful limbo, a pretty purgatory, an amorous abyss. When you touch me, I think I am dead. I sink into a kaleidoscope of your body. You are shattered into a million pieces, cutting my hips. I'm swallowed into a mosaic of broken bodies. I close my eyes until you are done. I wish I were made of soil and seeds to wrap my vines around you and choke you, I would. I'd snap your serpent spine as you slither through my garden. Divine, your eyes are made of scales, water ricochets like pebbles from your slippery skin. It's filled with sin. I bathe in sins, and asphodels wilting with infirmity. Take me. Like winter devours youth, devoid of blossoms. Tatter me again, my limbs. Torture me, I let you batter me limp. Reel my healing hips, will me into wine. Drink me. At communion, in the confession stand, let me blur your conscience, sweep your balance, taint your vision, while your mouth spills secrets that I held between my thighs until I bled. Timid, trembling inside, you come in, uninvited. I dream I am alone, wrapped by the starry sky's watery clouds, swaddling me, as warm as mother's womb, as quiet as heaven. In waking, moonlight unfurls into black, hurling my eyes back. I'm in bed with you, weaving my aching forgiveness into a blanket to hold you, whispering a dirge to my fingertips as I touch you. I feel your sins. I bathe in sins. Thank you.
Okay, so I got an honorable mention for this, for the sci-fi and fantasy thing. I'm just like reading certain chunks of it so that hopefully it makes sense. Yeah, let's get started. Princess Judy invisibly flew over the crowd in the main hall, where everyone was waiting for her. Spotting James amongst the crowd, she dove down and set herself behind some people surrounding him and reappeared. Squeezing through two adults, she made her way to James. "Judy, is that you?" James asked when he saw her. "Keep it down, James. Of course it's me," Judy said, smiling. Today was the day she would tell him. "How did you get here so fast?" Judy looked at the ground. "Listen, James, there's something I have to tell you." "What?" James asked. "I'm a half-goddess," she whispered. "Stay away from me," James' whisper shouted, backing away. "I mean it." Retracting herself, Judy watched as James ran away, hugging himself. Confused and disappointed, she made her way through the crowd, down the empty hallway, and back down the stairs into her room. She didn't feel like flying. It wasn't until she saw her mirror that she noticed the tears on her face. All the way across town, in a tiny apartment, a small boy cried into his pillow. 3 years later, Judy sat up with a start in her bed, breathing hard. Her hair was messy and sweat dripped off her nose. Rubbing her eyes, she kicked off her blankets and got out of bed. Snapping her fingers, she was in clothes and a coat. She opened her door, twisted up her face, and disappeared. Inspecting her handiwork, she flew down the hall. Judy glided through the tall buildings of the city, invisibly looking for James. It had been 3 years since they last talked, but she knew in general where to look. She needed to stop whatever was going to happen to him, whether it be in the near or distant future. Judy flew straight to Batsport. In about 10 minutes she had arrived. She looked around at the bustling people for James's familiar light blue coat, hoping he hadn't already left. After frantically searching for a little over a minute, she spotted him on a large boat with his little sister on his shoulders and a big smile on his face. After patting James's head like a drum, his sister took his glasses and put them on her own face, making her eyes look huge. She tipped her head so her face was in front of James's, eliciting a laugh. As much as Judy wanted to, she couldn't just go up to James and tell him that she felt fate would do him wrong. He would probably think she was totally crazy, and maybe even reject her again. Without giving it another thought, she zoomed onto the roof of the boat and invisibly watched as it lifted anchor and began to speed off. She waited for a while, but she was tired, so as the sun rose closer and closer to the center of the sky, she fell into a sleep without dreams. Judy woke when the sun was already high in the sky. Slowly getting up, Judy noticed the soft and fluffy clouds lining the sky. She flew into the clouds, feeling their mist against her skin. Going higher, she broke above the clouds and twirled in the sun. Not needing to be invisible anymore, she reappeared. She zoomed through the new world she had found, letting her hands skim the top of the clouds and imagining she was back home. Curling backwards, she fell headfirst into the clouds again. Feeling their moisture zooming past, she turned invisible again before breaking into the world with the boat. The boat was half underwater, and the whole thing was smoking. After watching in shock, Judy zoomed to the scene looking for James. She had to find him. When she flew over a lifeboat with 2 adults and James's sister in it, Judy froze. His sister's face was tear-stained and dirty. In that moment, Judy knew it was the girl from her dream, Amy. It was coming true. Judy snapped out of it and kept looking for James. Her ears picked up a tiny gasp, and she turned back to the boat. Amy was staring at something in the sea. Judy followed her gaze to a shimmer in the water, James's light blue coat. "You'd like to captain a capsized ship, but I like watching you live. Fiona Apple, Jonathan." Thank you.
This is an ode to the rain. Oh, rain, is it weird that I find comfort in your pain? My heart feels most warm when I'm surrounded by your storm, a feeling that's hard to explain. You give life to the trees, and your powerful breeze blows all my worries away. And after the storm, your clouds are torn to a colorful array. Falling from the sky are your beautiful raindrops rippling against the concrete and gathered on the rooftops. Sometimes I smile when your gloomy clouds surround the city for a while. Why some people fear you, I don't understand. To me, you're my escape from reality, a different kind of wonderland.
Gemini. White loves black, black loves white, they hate each other. Black and white are opposites, They're twins always getting compared to each other. White loves black, black loves white. They hate each other. Mama has a favorite. Her favorite with white hair, white skin, white dresses, white bows. Mama says I was a difficult child. Mama says I was her wild child that she never came back for because I have black hair, black skin, black dresses, black bows. Daddy left us a while ago, walking out a yellowing screen door that creaks with any pressure. He didn't look back because he doesn't have 2 kids now, because he doesn't remember my name. But he calls white every day. His voice holds so much love. I know I will never get the same. I am not white. I have 2 horns instead of a halo, and they do not glow blinding light. White loves black, black loves white. They hate each other. Nothing I do matters to no one. I shadow white, therefore I hate. White loves black, black loves white. They hate each other. White leaves me behind, turning her nose up, glaring her white eyes down at me. She doesn't care for anything other than Mama's love. Mama has too much love for her, so much love she has none left for me. I don't get a good morning. I get a short nod that ends with a sigh. White loves black, black loves white. They hate each other. Or maybe they're the same being that have 2 personalities in one ever-changing body, 2 sides of the same coin. Black can survive without white. White cannot survive without black. White loves black, black loves white. They hate each other.
I'm going to be reading a poem called A Kid Like Me / A Letter to My Younger Self. To the kid who dreamed from concrete corners and mattresses on the floor, this was not for the next generation. I'm here to let you know, as in you, the child who ran the bottom of your feet black because you like to feel the world from under us. Our elders always told us Our elders always, we had the world, either to give or to get, but never to be like those who take. We learned to dance to the beat of our own hearts. We learned rhythm to our rhymes. This is from your reality. I leave you with a note to remind you that when you are fighting for yourself, to make sure you're fighting for those who need it. That running away isn't forgetting your roots, it's making new beginnings, because when you can't find your spirit, you have to lose it more in order to guide yourself back. For you cannot be found if you are not lost. And please remember that everything around you can be as beautiful as you. Don't let the world tell you otherwise. Thank you.